Hello, people of the internet. I am American McGee, and I am coming to you once again by my lonesome. Normally, I would have my co-host Martin sitting here with me, but these days I am trying to unlock my Twitter partner affiliate something, which requires streaming daily for like 7 days in a row and an hour per day. I don't know. But anyway, I'm back. And I did one of these yesterday, and we went over a bunch of design notes for Alice Asylum. And today we will continue in that tradition, looking at some things related to Alice Asylum, answering your questions, and perhaps playing some Alice Madness Returns if I run out of all the other things that I might want to do. Rosov says 7 days among 30 is all you need. Yes, that's true. It is within 30, and I'm actually pretty close. This is going to count for my 5th day in 30, but I figured I'd just stick them all together because it's a weekend here. It's Saturday morning here in Shanghai. I figure I'd just knock them out. We did one on Thursday morning, which is our normal live stream time with Martin, and now I did one yesterday on Friday, and now it's Saturday, so I'll do another one Sunday, and pretty soon here I will have unlocked all of the little bits that are necessary to light up being affiliate. I think that's what they call it. So yeah, I tweeted that this was also we could get onto Twitch and e-beg, since that seems to be what everyone's doing. We were successful e-beggars over on YouTube, but we stopped using that platform despite the fact that I have like 30-something thousand followers there, because YouTube enabled a new UI interface thing that basically stopped our ability to collect or set a future time across time zones, like an international time zone for these streams. So as it was yesterday, it appears that the chat isn't updating here on the screen, even though I can see everyone's talking there in the chat. Yeah, Mezzo Dragon says time zones are weird. Actually, it was never a problem until YouTube did their their big fancy UI update. Speaking of UIs, I'm gonna switch back and forth here in the hopes that Streamlabs will start catching the contents that you're typing into the chat there, but it seems no, not working. It's quite strange. This happened yesterday as well, which is unfortunate because I like to have your chat showing up in the window there so that I can reference the things that you're talking about. Not sure what's going on. Someone's saying, what was that? Is that a new enemy design? No, it was actually a tarot card. So one of the things we've had a lot of people asking for with relation to just the Alice IP in general is that we would build a set of tarot cards. And so this was a piece of concept artwork that we did a while back for Teacups, a water elemental. If you know about tarot cards, you know there's all different kinds of houses and suits, and 72 cards in total. A lot of our Alice fans are really into tarot, and of course there's a lot of things that are referenced in and out of tarot and alchemy, and the symbolism contained in all of that has also been captured in both the first and second Alice games. So it actually makes a lot of sense that we would make a tarot deck. The reason I've not done this yet is because we don't have the license from EA for full-blown merchandise like this. They are aware of the kind of inspired by merchandise that we've been doing of late, and they're not bothered by it. But it's because it's not just a straight up, very clear, this is an Alice product with like all of the logoing and branding and stuff on it. For example, if I do a Cheshire Kitten plush, I can kind of get away with it. It's a bit cheeky because there was never a Cheshire Kitten in any of the games, and it would be really difficult for EA to prove that that's proper infringement on their rights. They may be able to do that, but it would probably make everybody involved in the process look a bit stinky. Whereas if I were to go and do a full-blown tarot card set with all of the branding and all of the characters, things like this, which is the Ruin, which is very much taken from Alice Madness Returns, that would probably not just because of the obvious infringement, but also because I imagine this would be incredibly successful, so that EA would come along and say, yeah, no, that's caused a bit too much of a stir. It's being a bit too successful, and you're gonna have to stop that. You're gonna have to knock that right off. So yeah, these were cards that were done. I think most of these were done by Omri. He put quite a bit of thinking into, taking reference from the characters in the game. So, for instance, this is the Phantasmagoria from the first Alice game, and using those to link up with potential cards or elements from the actual tarot. I can see by your reaction in the chat there, and what we've seen in the past is people are very, very interested in this type of stuff. So I do hope that once we get the license agreement in place for merchandise, this would actually be one of the first bits of merch that we would do. If you watched recently, I did a video where we took a trip to the factory outlet city of Yiwu in China, and there we found, among other things, factories that make large format cards which would be suitable or ideal for a tarot card deck. And so we have the place to make these kinds of cards. We obviously have the artwork to make it happen, and we have the support of a fan base who's interested in it. All the pieces are in place except for the final piece, which is permission from EA, which is what we happen to be working on right now. Speaking of that, let me see if there's any more of these cards you want to see. One of the things that I want to cover today would be the presentation material that we've been working on. Some of you may have seen this in the past. If you're one of our insane children over on Patreon, we do share updates to this material from time to time. But in this last week, which is the first week of July 2020, we've actually gone through a series of revisions to those materials in preparation for re-presenting them to a potential financier / publisher. I cannot name who that party is, other than to say that they are interested and they're capable of funding and publishing Alice Asylum. So in order to get them to the next step of the process, we have to present to them what our concept is for the game and what our model is for the development and then the success of the game. So we're going to take a look at that this morning and get your feedback. It's also going to give me an opportunity to go through those materials and talk about what it is we're doing and why it's going to be successful, which is a bit of a practice run for me because I'm going to have a phone call exactly in line with that in the next week or two here with said financier publisher. I have to get on the phone and walk them through the materials and explain to them who we are, what we're trying to do, and why they should give us their money, and why we are going to be successful in turning that money into a game, which then goes on to make more money. So this is sort of the nuts and bolts of game development behind the scenes in the pre-production stage. Many people I've seen on Facebook and Twitter, there's been not a huge amount, but there's been some people who've become a bit distressed and or maybe disheartened, disenfranchised, disenchanted with this process because it's very slow. I mean, we've been at this for basically 2 years now of pre-production, creation of art assets, definition of the game design, and then the whole ongoing pitch process of refining the pitch and then pitching the concept to a variety of different potential financiers and publishers. Among those that we've pitched to have been companies like Amazon, who I think is sort of still at the table, but they never gave us what you'd call a hard pass, but they've never said yes either. Netflix was at the table briefly, and they actually came back with a hard pass on both a game and a TV show. I never really quite understood the rationale behind the pass, because when you look at the materials that we present and you also look at their catalog of things that they produce and broadcast or publish, you'd think that the Alice IP would be a perfect fit for Netflix. And if you also take into context the fact that they are spending money like crazy these days, I have friends that tell me that almost anything you take there is going to get picked up, at least for development. So I was quite surprised when they passed, because I was under the impression that if you took something even half smart to them, there was a pretty good chance that they would, at least pick it up for an initial exploration. So, as Rod Buja says, they are really missing out on it. Perhaps. We did have quite a few of our insane children say that they didn't want Netflix to pick up the Alice IP. They felt that Netflix wouldn't necessarily be the best home for it. I also don't know if Amazon would necessarily be the best home for it. Now, we went and talked to Netflix because they were having great success with a TV series based on The Witcher, which The Witcher itself is a game, but it's also itself based on a book. I know that Amazon is now, testing the waters in terms of publishing games, and they have more and more TV shows coming out. They just announced, I don't know if it was the first announcement, but I saw an announcement with relation to Amazon and Bethesda for a series of TV episodes, or a whole series based on the Fallout IP. And so, there's a lot of games, or at least a few games, getting converted into TV shows by these studios, Amazon and Netflix and others. Seems like Alice might have a place in there, but again, we continue the pitch process, and we have yet to. When he says, "I hope it's not as bad as Fallout 76." Yeah, that didn't go off very well, did it? Sir Rack of Lamb says, "Do you have a Kickstarter?" No, Sir Rack of Lamb. We have a Patreon. So all the work that you see us presenting and the names you see scrolling by over there, those are all of our patrons, who we refer to lovingly as our insane children. And if you look over at patreon.com/AmericanMcGee, you will find a giant collection of all the work that we've been doing over the last couple of years. That includes the narrative of the new game. So massive spoiler alerts. If you don't want to have the story ruined, don't go look at the Patreon. But it also includes game design, it includes art, tons and tons of art, it includes a lot of the merchandise ideas, and it also includes a peek into the process of pitching what we're working on to companies like Netflix or Amazon, and a whole host of others that I can't really name. Now, I'm not really supposed to say Netflix, Amazon, but like I said, Netflix gave us a hard pass. And Amazon's been at the table for so long. Like, they were one of the first people that expressed interest in working with us. I know we're under NDA, but it's like, if you're not going to give us a hard pass and you're still sort of soft interested in it, but it's been 2 years, I don't know, I mean, what's the phrase, poop or get off the pot, right? So anyway, we don't have a Kickstarter for this, and in fact, we are not allowed to do a Kickstarter, and even if we were, I wouldn't do a Kickstarter, because as you'll see, as we start to go through the materials that we're working on here, the budget that we need for a new Alice game is upwards of $30 million US, which is very much in line with what a AAA multi-platform title costs to develop these days. Keep in mind that the cost all in for the development, marketing, and publication of Alice Madness Returns was nearly $20 million. The total budget that was loaned towards the project, I think, was about $18 million, and about $10 million of that went into direct development costs. In other words, the $10 million was spent on art assets and programming and things like that. That was 10 years ago, so with inflation and the ever-increasing cost of things, you can imagine that a budget today for the game alone would probably be somewhere north of 25 million, plus then you need money in there for marketing and manufacturing and things like that. So that's where we're going, and I don't think that anyone has ever run a Kickstarter that's worth that much money, $30 million. We're doing things on Patreon, but I often point out to people who complain about the fact that we're using Patreon, that we have a team of 8 people producing all this artwork, and if you multiply 8 people times the minimum budget for those people per month, you can imagine that the Patreon does support those artists, but it doesn't do much more than that. And I've made the comment before that at the current rate of funding we receive over on Patreon, it would take us 30 years to match the production that we did on Alice Madness Returns. And I imagine in 30 years, like whatever PS5, 6, 7 won't even be relevant anymore, and games will probably cost $1 trillion a piece to make. So Patreon is also not going to be the pathway to funding a full game, but it is what's allowing us to do a tremendous amount of slow burn pre-production, which means all of the art, all the design, all the narrative, and all of that is going to go into a giant design Bible. And that's what this workspace that we have here over on Monday is geared towards. It's where we focus all of our efforts to get that design Bible built and in a position where when we do start production on the game, we will have everything as far as the planning, the characters, all that kind of stuff will be done. So again, if you're interested in digging more deeply into all this kind of stuff, you can head over to Patreon, and we do updates over there all the time. And then those updates are early access for our insane children, but they unlock for free for everybody after 3 days. So you don't even have to be a patron in order to consume all the content that we're producing. All right, with that, let us jump into what it is that we're pitching. Again, we are pitching this, which is Alice Asylum. We are pitching to a publisher slash financier who cannot be named, so they will remain nameless. If you've been involved with this process at all in the past, you probably will have seen these materials before, but these are slightly revamped. Some of that revamping is just simply to update the timing, because from when we first built these presentation materials until today, I think this document in particular we built late last year, so it would have been around September or October of 2019. And I think we initially built this for, I want to say we initially built this for Netflix. I can't really remember. There's been so many companies we've pitched. So anyway, this is just meant to be an overview, what you'd call sort of like an executive summary of what is the Alice franchise, and also what specifically is the pitch for Alice Asylum. So it starts off trying to kind of very politely suggest that the information contained in here is very basic, but then again, we're pitching to people sometimes who are not aware of, first of all, what the Alice series is, nor have they ever played games, much less played the Alice games. So it starts off here making it clear that the purpose of this document is to provide some very basic information about building an Alice Asylum game, and we will assume that the reader has never played or researched the previous Alice games. Now, by the way, as I read through this, please be my sounding board, be my devil's advocate. If anything seems unclear or seems less than, then please point it out, because this is an interactive process. We still have one more kind of round of changes we could do to this before we go to the pitch meeting. So I'd love to hear any feedback or thoughts that you might have. Couple of questions. Agrippina says, did Alex design the cover art? Yes, actually, Alex, just really quick, a bunch of props to Alex. Not only is he a really good artist, and especially good at sort of like logo design and things that you would do traditionally in Adobe Illustrator, so like vector art, things like that. He's also really good at the creation and layout of things like that turn into printed materials. Like really, really good at it, because he worked for years in the print industry, so he has a very deep knowledge of printing techniques and materials and how to set up and lay out materials for printing. So he's fantastic. Like, the fact that we have an Alex, a person with that skill set on our team, has been incredibly valuable, because it's put us in a position to build presentation materials at a level of quality that is matched to the level of quality we expect to see with the final product. And that's not an easy thing. If you know anything about sort of the building of presentation materials, you'll know that really high quality presentation materials are not easy. You know, the lowest end of the standard, you just have like basic PowerPoints, the kind of crap that I would build. And then you kind of move up the spectrum to people who become really good with those tools. And then you get to the point where we are here, where Alex is using very high level design techniques and tools to present things that not only look great on screen, but we also print these things out. And a lot of times we like to send these as physical things to the people we're pitching. I'm looking around my desk here because I'm trying to see if we have one of these physical things to hold up, but I don't have one here with me. Someone, Twisted Psychiatrist, says, do you share stuff on Instagram? Yes, Twisted Psychiatrist. I have an Instagram. If you go to instagram.com/AmericanMcGee, I think for most of the platforms like twitch.tv/AmericanMcGee, Twitter/AmericanMcGee, Facebook/AmericanMcGee. The only one that's kind of weird is YouTube is like /AmericanMcGee official, but Patreon/AmericanMcGee. So pretty simple. And then yeah, there's an Instagram and there's all kinds of stuff up there. My favorite of all the stuff is our boy. He's gonna turn. He just turned 10 months old 2 days ago, so that's Lucky. Happy 10th month birthday to Lucky. Right, so the presentation starts off with that disclaimer, and then basically this is done in the format of a Q&A. So we just go down the list. What is the game? What is the story? What's the game loop? What's the session length? What's the production plan? What is the tech decision? In other words, what engine are we going to use to build this game? And then what are the target price points? So this is actually a really short summary of all this. I guess what you might sometimes call this or refer to as an executive summary. In other words, the executives in companies are so hard pressed for time that they can't do a deep dive. They rely on people below them to do thorough research into what it is that they are making decisions on, but they still need some sort of high-level presentation so they can pretend that they know what it is that they're making decisions on. So, first question is, what is the game? Now, if you're here watching this, you know what the game is. We had the original one back in 1999, 2000, was called American McGee's Alice. We had a second one which followed 10 years later. I think we published in 2011. That was Alice Madness Returns, and now we're talking about a third one here in red, which is called Alice Asylum. So Asylum would be the third game in the series, and it is going to be PC console, and like the previous games, it's going to be narrative-driven, third-person, action-adventure, and it's going to have this kind of trifecta of puzzle-solving, platforming, and psychological horror. So I think that does a pretty good job of capturing what the Alice games are and have been historically, and what we're going to do for the new game as well. Another point we like to make is that the people who follow after the Alice games, it's not like a normal video game. I mean, it's quite literally a cult following, and so there are tons of fans. They're out there playing the games. They are getting tattoos. They are doing cosplay. They're collecting merchandise, and then that merchandise goes on to increase dramatically in value over time. So there's something special going on here that is atypical. It's not what you see with just like every single video game out there. There are just a few games that fall into the category where that sort of fandom exists around them. Tail Muchi says there's a website called Linktree where you could put in all of your social media bios to direct people to exactly what they're looking for. Yeah, actually, I just use my main website for that. If you just go to AmericanMcGee.com, and then you'll actually find there's a mailing list and then also all the links to all the social media stuff. I don't know if Linktree does something that goes beyond that, but again, for me, everything just resolves down to my name. So if you just punch in AmericanMcGee.com, you will get that. And I think if you type this into like Google or a search engine, it generally ends up that it's pretty easy to find me. I mean, like my blog shows up as the very first link on Google and other places. So I don't feel like people have much trouble finding me. I mean, I used to be quite sarcastic about this because I'd get people asking me for stuff, and I would use that site called Let Me Google That For You, where it does like the little snarky animation of typing in the thing on Google and hitting enter and then shows them the results. This is one of those things that actually tweaks me a bit, is we get people who on my Instagram posts where I'm talking about something they can buy on the Mysterious Shop will ask where they can find it on the literal post where it's telling them where they can find it and contains a link to the thing and says type in this link because links don't work on Instagram. So I don't know what's wrong with people. I think they literally want you to go and type things in on their device for them. And if you say any of that, then they tell you that you're rude and that they're not your fan anymore. So I've lost a lot of fans over that particular question. If Linktree helps with that, great. Love of Dragons 1221 says, so is it only for PS5? Well, Love of Dragons, along those same lines, I'm hoping that you can see down here along the bottom, there's this giant blob of icons related to platforms, and it says Xbox One, PS4, Switch. I think that's the Origin logo, but I don't know how much longer EA is going to be doing Origin. There is a PC, and it even has a console controller plugged into the monitor, which is a really stupid place to plug your console controller into, by the way. It has Xbox Series 1, the PlayStation logo, and the PS5 logo. So I'm hoping that that does a lot to explain the platforms that we intend for this game to be on. If that's not clear enough, I don't know, mail your phone to me, like FedEx it, and then I'll punch it into your phone and send your phone back to you. All right. What is the story? So page 2 of the presentation deals with the story. Now, this is difficult because there are so many layers and levels in the story that I oftentimes feel we're doing a disservice in trying to pitch it straight. In other words, I think there's imagine if somebody tried to pitch to you the story of BioShock. If Ken Levine was like trying to pitch BioShock, but somehow he had to maintain the magic of the "Would you kindly" hook, the twist. And I'm kind of curious, like if I could ask Ken Levine a question, it would be, did you reveal the "Would you kindly" twist in your pitch? Because there's a couple of big twists that go on within the story that I've built for Alice Asylum, and so far there's only a handful of people who know what those twists really are, and they're big, and I'm kind of hesitant to put them into the pitch materials, but at the same time I feel like if I don't put them in the pitch materials, that when we go to the publisher, they're going to be like, whatever, your story is lame and there's nothing here for us to really get engaged with. But anyway, as it's on the page here, Alice Asylum is the story of 13-year-old Alice, and of course we all know that she is the sole survivor of the fire which consumed her home and her family. And so at the point where we meet her in Asylum, it's actually taking place before both Madness Returns and American McGee's Alice. Back there on the wall of my office somewhere, I've got a chart that actually has the specific dates for when all of this takes place. But this is 13-year-old Alice, and if you read the case book that came with the first game, or you can go and look at it online, there's PDFs available at, I think it's over on the American McGee Alice wiki, which is like a fan-maintained site. But if you read that case book, you'll find that the sequence of events was there was a fire, burned down her house, and then she was actually hospitalized in a regular hospital for a period of time, and then she was moved to Rutledge Asylum. And then after being moved to Rutledge Asylum, she went into a coma for 8 years or something like that. This game, Alice Asylum, takes place in the period during the coma leading up to AMA, the first game. So we're dealing with a 13-year-old girl, and we're dealing with her working through the stages of grief. So those would be things like shock and denial and anger and bargaining and acceptance. And as I've done with the previous games, I'm taking those larger constructs and I'm using them as the framework for all of the story and artwork and representations of characters and her psyche that make up the journey through this adventure. And so she's got to overcome all of these stages of grief, which are then represented themselves as realms within the story, within the characters. And then she's got to, of course, overcome what threatens to destroy her. So in this case, what threatens to destroy her, we've been looking at recently, it's this tentacle chaos monster. I don't know if I put that up on Instagram yesterday. That's not it. That's my kid. Here it is. So this is the tentacle chaos monster. This is what she discovers is taking over Wonderland. So the story is one of chaos versus order, or order versus chaos, wherein the Queen of Hearts is actually sat on the side of order, and the Chess Queen is on the side of chaos, and there's something on the outside of Wonderland. It is the chaos that's trying to break into Wonderland and destroy everything. So Alice finds herself caught in the middle of all of that. Continuing with the story in the presentation, this is much like the previous two games. It's going to be toys as weapons. She's going to have the Vorpal blade. She's got a magical, amazing collection of dresses, each of them that has their own kind of power and abilities. And of course, she's got the Cheshire Cat and her White Rabbit plush along for the adventure. So that's the basic overview of the story. Now, there's a lot more to it, and I'm not sure how to get into that other than to say, like, if you saw or liked the movie Inception, where you had multiple layers of a reality, which got deeper and deeper, and you could kind of get lost inside of all of that, or if you were a fan of the movies, of the series The Matrix, again, a movie that dealt with alternate realities or an alternate presentation of reality. There's hints of all of that contained within what we're doing in Asylum. In effect, this is a story of adult Alice traveling back in time, but it's really more of like an inner journey to reconnect with her inner child and to reunite herself with her inner child. So there's a kind of strange internal time travel happening here, because it's adult Alice who's looking back to her 13-year-old self, who is trapped inside this Groundhog Day reality, and doesn't want to come out because she's not aware that there's an existence outside of what she knows. She's living in this constant state of denial. So the perspective is purely one of the 13-year-old girl. She doesn't realize that it's her adult self that's trying to reach in and rescue her. So there's a lot of layers to what's going on inside of this. And again, it's difficult to explain that within a single page pitch. But I think when I'm on this call with the people that are hearing this, I'll pretty much go through, as I just did with you, a deeper exploration or explanation of the fact that there's a lot more in the story. And then I can ask them, like I would ask anybody, do you really want to know the twist, the would you kindly of this story, or would you like to not have it messed up for you? So we'll see. A couple of the comments going on here in the chat. The False Summer says, my only worry is that the pitch doesn't say explicitly what Alice wants and what is keeping her from getting it. Yeah, that's it's an interesting one. I mean, it says that she's journeying through the stages of grief, but I kind of get what you're saying. It needs to maybe be a little bit more clear. I mean, saving Wonderland would be the high level story here, but actually there's a better representation of this. So I take your point. That's actually a pretty good point. If you look at this other presentation, which we're going to look at in a minute here, I think there's here we go. So this slide, I think, covers it. This says a young girl's jailbreak from her own mental prison. So this concept of a prison of the mind, this is the single line encapsulation, I think, of what you're saying there, the False Summer. And so maybe I need to hammer that home on one of the pages that we were just looking at, that this is a prison break of the mind, because that kind of says it all. She's in a mental prison. She's got to get out, right? Thing to think about. Couple of other comments. I see Greg Octo Chicken has joined us. Hello, Greg. And False Summer also says, for books, I think the standard query pitch covers only the first 25% of the story. Yeah, there's a lot to be said for trying to get that opening, right? If it's a film script or if it's a standard lit pitch, you try to give away, the first 10 pages, the first half hour, things like that. The thing is that I think it's up to the writer in the room to then say, but it turns out that at the end of this, Neo was inside of the Matrix the whole time, right? Like that. So you still have to think to the executives that you're hoping are going to give you all this money. You're going to have to sell them that, hey, there's a big twist. It's really amazing. And, give me $30 million. So, Arter Zero says you should ask Yoko Taro how he pitched his games. Yeah. Chess being a part of chaos is ironic, says Mezzo Dragon. Yeah, I was thinking about that a bit. So I had this sense that the outcome of playing cards is more statistical, which may be part of the reasons why, card games at Vegas, and there's a statistical analysis and awareness of like what those games will play like. Whereas, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel that chess is one of those things that, it's taken a really long time for computers to struggle with getting good at chess because of the infinite number of moves possible inside of any one game, and the necessity for the awareness of the interaction between the moves spawning even more moves. So it's a fractal thing in its very nature, and one of the things that we're linking up with chaos in Asylum is fractal things as well. So again, going back to this card guard with the tentacles, that's a fractal type of creature, and that is a good representation of chaos. And of course, in this, we see that the fractal beastie is attacking a card guard, who we have the card guards on the side of order. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if the analogy works 100%. We're still kind of polishing off the rough edges of that, but something to think about. Bioshock pitch might have been man's plane vacation is interrupted, gets wet shoes, picks up golf. Yeah, Greg, there's a lot of ways you could go at the pitch for Bioshock, but capturing the magic of it in a pitch is going to be tough. So, Fall Summer says, tangential, what hooked me into the story of Madness Returns was Alice's assertion at the beginning that I want to forget, and that the accompanying denial of reality that accompanied the first 2 chapters. Was the assertion, I think she said these aren't memories, they're nightmares. And was it Alice that wanted to forget, or was it Bumby that wanted Alice to forget? I think we just went through that on this most recent, replaying of Madness Returns, and I think I actually called out what I sensed to be an inconsistency in the line of dialogue at the start of the game, because the notion that you forget your traumas instead of working through them is not one that I'm really on board with. And so and I think what I said when we were starting up the game is that she said something like, I want to forget, but then she goes around collecting memories and trying not to forget. So I felt that line of dialogue was actually out of sync with the core message of the game. But anyway, something, a bit of trivia there. All right, I'm trying to see if there's any other comments that we should cover here before we move on to the next page. Love a Dragon saying, will there still be memories to collect? I don't think that the memory collection concept in that format is going to survive. No, we are going to be collecting things because it's a freaking video game, and video games are all about collecting things, but I don't know that we'll be collecting memories. We'll see. P. Vap says, just finished Madness Returns the other day. Loved it. Really happy. And others in the work. We're doing some more dissection of the story of Bioshock. Yeah, a couple people are also saying Bumby wanted her to forget, or wasn't it Bumby that wanted her to forget? Yeah, you're all right on that, but as I said, we just did another replay of Madness Returns the other day, and I was surprised to hear that Alice's utterance was something like, they're not memories, it's like a jackhammer in my head or something along those lines, and she actually says she wants to forget. And I felt that was not correct, but then again, she could start off at the beginning saying, I want to forget, and then learn over the course of the game that forgetting is not the way to resolve the problem, because in reality, when it comes to trauma, forgetting or ignoring the traumas is not the way to solve it. In fact, confronting and taking on head first the things that frighten you is the way to resolve those things. So that, I think, is why if you don't play through the whole game, it may feel a little confusing that she starts off saying, I want to forget, but by the end of it, she realizes that by not forgetting, she is set free. So, a steamroller in her chest, says Mezzo Dragon. Yes, you got the quote correct. All right. Deeps to the Peeps says, is there a reason why the tentacly card guards start out as being skeletal undead like they were in AMR? Yeah, I mean, when our artists are working on concepts for, say, the tentacle beasties, they're not always being on spec about the underlying or background stuff that's going on. So I wouldn't take too much in as far as does that image establish what our card guards are actually going to look like in Asylum. That's just, I think, a random card guard plucked from anywhere in the timeline who we're using as tentacle fodder, so don't read too much into that. All right, continuing on. So that was what is the game, what is the story? For those of you that are joining late, we are doing a quick walkthrough of the presentation materials that are being put in front of a potential financier and publisher. I'm trying to do kind of what I would do by way of a pitch to that group, and then gathering feedback from you, insane children and fans of the IP. You're going to play devil's advocate and give me feedback, which we can then use to make the pitch better. So something summer, I can't remember exactly what the name was, but the false summer mentioned just making more of a point of what does Alice want on the story page here. And that's a good point, and I brought up that, we need to emphasize the notion that this is a jailbreak from her own mental prison. We need to copy that over to this page as well. All right, moving along. So this third section basically just covers what is the game loop, right? So what is it that happens moment to moment? Now, when you go to pitch publishers on your game concepts, this is one of the basic details that they want to make sure. I don't know if it's that they want to make sure you've thought about it, but they want to make sure that they understand what you think it is, which to me has always been kind of funny, because from the first instance of Alice 1 through Madness Returns and to today, we all know what the Alice games are. And the people who listen to these pitches often claim to be fans of the Alice games and say that they've played the Alice games. But oftentimes they still want it explained to them what are the Alice games. So this was our way of just taking a bit of word salad, my back and forth with Alex, and saying, all right, well, just put these core concepts into a visual format that can communicate what is the game loop. So underlying everything inside of our game loop are the two notions of curiosity and discovery. So you could call that something like exploration and overcoming, or as we have here, curiosity and discovery. But curiosity is what pulls you forward through the game at all times. What's around the next corner? Where is the Cheshire Cat leading me? What's inside this box? And then discovery is just the reward given to you once you've overcome an obstacle. So curiosity pulls you into a scene. There's a treasure at the end of the scene, and discovery is the uncovering of whatever it is that's inside that reward. False Summer says, the full quote I was referring to, I want to forget, who would choose to be alone, imprisoned by their broken memories. And there you go. So she said she wanted to forget, but my point would be that while she may have stated that she wanted to forget, ultimately what she learns is that forgetting is not the medicine that she needs to cure what ails her. In fact, pushing Bumby in front of a train after recalling all of the gruesome details of his malfeasance is what she needed to make her feel better. So yeah, if you're not feeling great, push somebody in front of a train. But make sure that they deserve it first. By the way, I'm not a licensed psychologist, so please don't push people in front of trains. So back to the game loop. We just go through these points. It's a narrative-driven exploration game that has combat, puzzles, and spatial challenges inside of it. And, of course, that can describe a lot of games. That could describe, a lot of the Zelda games. Describe even, what was the thing I just played, Days Gone. So it's not an unusual concept. Now, of course, we have our loop theme being horror. You know, I think the Alice games are a kind of horror game, but you know, for anybody who's played them, you understand it's not a kind of shock value, you know, pop up things in your vision make you scream. I'm much more into the atmospheric horror, much more into the psychological horror, just the kind of horror of knowing the terror that she's going through on these adventures. So what have we got in there? We've got generous checkpoints and non-threatening progression. This is just because I think not just the Alice games, but a lot of games in general need to be more general audience. I think one of the mistakes that we as game developers make is that we assume a vocabulary, that's the right word, but we assume an awareness of game tropes, whether they be in movement or in combat, or even just in progression through dialogue trees. We assume these things about players that for a lot of non-gamers are just not basic skills. They're not there. So one of the things that I've noticed, especially when we've brought in uninitiated game testers, is that you will be just absolutely shocked at how badly they navigate a game. I don't mean the environment of the game. I just mean like from picking up the controller. They'll pick it up like it's a porcupine or a snake or something, you know, and they feel really intimidated by not just the physical nature of the controller, but also of like how the controller interacts with the game. And there's clearly a spectrum of just how easy you want to make these things. But my point here in this one is that we do want to make it as accessible as possible. One of the reasons being that Alice in Wonderland is among the world's most recognized pieces of literature, and she's one of the most recognized characters in the world. And I want to make sure that we make it as accessible as a game as it would be as a book. So that's one of the reasons I put this point in there. Any other comments going? Yeah, people are talking about the ride concept art that's presented here. False Summer is asking, do spatial challenges equal platforming? Yes, it's just moving through a 3D space and having the space be itself a challenge. So it could be climbing walls, it could be platforming, it could be dress floating, it could be pushing blocks out of the way. It could be trying to figure out how to get over a chasm. It's just basically anything that happens in the 3D physical space. Next point on the game loop is that we are going to have a curated linear level design combined with exploration and discovery. When we say curated, the meaning there is that it pulls you along and that the levels themselves are in effect like the sentences on the page in a paragraph of a book. So they have a very clear beginning, middle, and end to each and every scene. In other words, you never find yourself at a loss for where to go next. Because for me, one of the things that really takes me out of an adventure and takes me out of a story is the frustration that comes with suddenly not knowing where I'm supposed to go next. And I actually think that one of the places where hand-holding is a good thing, where making it clear where what the player is supposed to do next is a good thing, is in your level design being structured just like you'd structure a sentence. It's not like you get halfway through a sentence and then you start writing all the words backwards or upside down. But a lot of times in games we have that happen where you're halfway through a sentence and then that sentence continues somewhere on another page, but you don't have any sort of marker to tell you where to go or how to get there, or it changes to a different language, or it's upside down. So I always find that those types of experiences are really jarring, at least when it comes to linear storytelling games. Now, if it's like a Fallout game and I'm out there and I'm in exploration mode, or I'm playing Minecraft and I'm in exploration mode, that's totally fine. But that's a particular mode of game playing that there's some games that are big enough that you can switch back and forth between the two. But I think the Alice games have never been, they're not like asset tourism games in the sense of you're just out exploring around in these big open spaces. We generally tend to be quite linear in our progression through the games. So anyway, that's what curated means. I don't know. I struggled a bit with that word. Might want to change that. Let's see. Any other questions we have going on here? Sleepy Wednesday says, yeah, I always thought that the atmosphere and locations in the Alice series have been a lot scarier than games that rely on jump scares for horror. Yeah, so you know, when I was working back in the day on the Doom games and the Quake games, we hadn't really yet invented jump scares, but what we did have was audio. So we had really scary music and we had really scary monster sounds. And one of the things that we often would use was just sound. You know, you'd go into what looked like an empty room, but in that empty room, you could hear the monsters in the walls, and you just didn't know exactly what was going to be the thing that triggered the opening of the doors and caused the monsters to come out, but you knew they were there because you could hear them. And of course the music was playing in the background, some spooky, you know, Nine Inch Nails drone, and that, to me, it actually left me in situations where I'd be working on the game or playing the game that we were building, and I'd be looking around over my shoulder at night while working on the game because the hairs would be rising up on the back of my neck. And that had nothing to do with jump scares. So I've always been a big fan of that sort of horror. Tilamuchi says, will there be more purple flowers in Asylum to heal players, as well as currency still be collecting teeth to upgrade weapons? I don't know about the purple flowers question. I mean, I'm doing a playthrough of Madness Returns right now, and you know, the purple flowers, I don't know if you're using them the right way, because people were making fun of me at the fact that I was apparently using them incorrectly. But you know, you shrink into them and then you stay in them, and they, while you're in them, they will completely refill your health. So don't just jump in there and then get one little bit of health and then pop out and destroy the thing. You need to get in there and hold down the button. If you do that, you're getting a full refill of your health each and every time. Question about currency, whether or not it'll be collecting teeth. Actually, we're going to be collecting chaos coins, and that's something that we had previously designed, and it's actually something that you can go and see over on the Mysterious Shop. I've got the Mysterious Shop loaded up here. Where is it? Anyway, chaos coins, that's what we want to have be the primary collectible. Now, there's going to be other collectibles, because again, games are nothing if they aren't collectible engines. But this is a chaos coin, and you can see it's like an actual physical thing, but it also will be an in-game thing. So here Alex had done up a bit of sample UI for what a chaos coin would look like. Now, the cool thing about these chaos coins is that if you go and you buy one of the physical ones right now, you will receive an email which will ask you what message and what name you want to attach to the virtual coin in the game. And then when we put the virtual coins into the game, you can run around and collect them, and you will have a particular chaos coin located in a particular place. And when you pick it up, it'll say your name, and it'll say whatever your little message was that you decided to embed in that particular coin. So this is by way of something we would get to later on in this pitch, is the crossover between physical merchandise and in-game content. Instead of selling people DLC that vanishes when the game goes offline or whatever, they're getting physical stuff instead. So any other questions we have going on here? Was Bobby Prince a cool dude? Says Deeps to the Beeps. Yeah, I didn't know Bobby super well. He was there when I started working on Doom, but I didn't have a really close relationship with him. But he always seemed like a really nice guy to me, and I always liked the music that he did as well. What else do we have? Love of Dragons 1221 says, ignore those people. It's your game. Do what you want. I hope people just give you advice and a suggestion about healing flowers next time. Not sure which people those are, but okay. It's teeth on your coins. Chile, says Sleepy Wednesday. Okay. Crimson Dart. Crimson D Art. I have a question. In a game perspective, how far will the player's camera compared to the Alice model? Sorry, I'm asking this because of the horror aspect. Because in my opinion, it's more terrifying when the player is more close to the main character, witnessing, like if we were on that spot. I know that I'm wrong about this topic, but it's something that I'm curious to know as a fan. Don't want to be disrespectful. No, okay. Crimson Art, I think your question is about the relationship between the player model and the distance of the camera. And, that's something that we actually have to invest quite a bit of time in to get this soft rubber bandy camera that follows along behind in a third person game. And to your point, an ideal situation would be one where there's really good camera direction on the camera, which is independent somewhat of the player, and that allows us to be more cinematic in game while something scary is unfolding. Now, actually, it's interesting because this is something that's come up as a topic in my recent playthroughs of Alice Madness Returns. That is that in that game, we have multiple locations where the level designers take away your camera control. They take away the camera following automatically behind the player, and the result is very frustrating. You want the camera where it's supposed to be because suddenly your controls are relative to the player on the screen but not to the camera, and it's a little jarring. And you can continue to play through it if you know to make the translation on the movement versus the position of the player and where you are in terms of the controller, but it typically ends up being quite frustrating. So we may, in Asylum, do something like you said with just distance between the player and the camera in this direction, but I don't know that we want to be taking control away in these directions, rotating the camera around as well. Because again, my experience with Madness Returns is that when that kind of camera control is overridden, it becomes actually really frustrating. My preference is that when we're going to take full control of a camera like that, we just switch to a cinematic, right? So we just make it clear to the player, you're not in danger, the cinematic's going to play out, we're going to have complete control of the camera and the scene, and then when this is over, we'll give you control back. I'd prefer that was the solution for things like that. Telemucci says, how are you filtering messages on the coins, though? Well, they come in and we read them, and if there's something inappropriate in there, we send an email back to the person and say that's inappropriate. So it's a manual review process, and if you look at the page on Mysterious or the email you get, I think it actually says right here, after purchase of the Chaos Coin, you will receive a survey link to where you're able to submit and edit your name and message. It'll remain open up until the point where we're about to ship the game, and I think it's in that email that in the email it says something like, we reserve the right to accept, or oh yeah, it's right here. You get to get a name and a message in parentheses as approved by us. So we have had people submit names that we found were inappropriate or messages we thought were inappropriate, and we just email them back and say, nope, give us a different one. How are you filtering messages? Okay, just answered that one. A shoulder view, use the camera from Sonic Adventure. Prism, like Prism, no. Is the more esoteric, fantastical aspects of the Alice Games series the result of early art direction or improvised level design, or is it a mix of the two, says Dave the Swede. Hoping I'm saying that right. Dave the Squeed. So Dave, that's a really good question, and it's one that came up really recently in our design discussions with the pre-production team, because I think it was Alex who asked me, how deep down do we want to dive in the design Bible with regards to the layout and design and building of these levels? And because we are going through each and every area in the game, I'm not sure if this has art in it. There's a lot of text in there. We are going through all these places. So like here you can see these are snippets of art from the Denial Realm, which is also known as the Circus Realm. I said to Alex that we should do high-level pieces like this, but we should not try in this early stage to actually map out all the levels. Instead, we should be giving the artists and the level designers a very clear indication of what these things look like thematically, but that once production starts on the game, the level designers are often better positioned to do really fun stuff if they can do what we call white boxes first. And the white boxes contain the levers and the platforms and all the bits of moving puzzle elements, and then they are textured over using the bits and pieces of 3D model that come out of the translation of these pieces of artwork into the 3D models and the effects and the particles and things like that that constitute the palette that they work with. So in other words, it's build the high level aesthetics and the key pieces of art like you see here, give the level designers the ability to go in white box or gray box or whatever you want to call it, the levels, and then they will go back and fill in on top of that with all the art elements like you see here. And of course, there is a bit of a back and forth because a lot of times you want to have hero pieces or key pieces of art that you have to know from the beginning are going to fit into certain areas of the game. So there is a back and forth, and there is some parts where you do pre-planning and you do have crossover to the art department directing what the level designers will build around. All right. Any other questions? Can't read. I'm stupid. Don't waste your energy on my questions. Okay. Yeah. I think that's it for comments for now. So let's go back to... Oh, Dave says I nailed it with Scoweed. All right. Probably screwed it up that time. Next points on the game loop is that, yes, we're going to have a loosely connected central hub, which would add replayability and an ability to fast travel to the central hub, which is the train station. Now, we have done up the concept for the train station. I don't know if that's made it into Monday or not, but if you are following us over on Patreon, you can go... Now, I think you have to be logged in order to do the search, so I won't be able to do it right now. But you can go and see the artwork of the train station. And I don't think I'm going to be able to find it very easily here in Monday. But anyway, the point is that the game will have a kind of hub structure to it. So once you get out of denial and you've done the first mission given to you by the Queen, going to see the Hatter, that unlocks the central hub. And then from there you go on this sort of longer format exploration and collection mission around Wonderland in order to try to defeat the chaos. And a lot of that is helped along by a central hub. So that's something that the previous games did not have. Now, maybe this will end up falling on the cutting room floor. I'm not super attached to this concept, but I think that it helps to give people who hear the pitch something that's familiar, that they've seen done in lots of other games, especially when it comes to modern day games that have this same sort of game loop. Each area is a self-contained world unto itself. That means that it's internally consistent visually and unique amongst the others. Now, if you've played the other Alice games, you know what this means. It means that we have different zones. You know, one may be owned by the Mad Hatter, one is the zone of the Queen of Hearts. So we did that in Madness Returns, we did that in the original Alice. We're going to do that in Asylum, and you can see that from the work that's being done in the design work so far. We have these realms. If you go in here, you'll see that, you know, we've got Queensland, we've got Denial, we've got Bargaining, which is the Hatter's realm. There is a lot of art done for all these places, but I don't think the team has put that art into Monday yet. So, because we had another system we were using for ages over on Trello. I don't even know if I can make Trello come up still or not. Let's see. Because if I can, yeah, okay. I don't know what's happened. Oh, because I'm not logged in. Anyway, there is a ton of art for all those zones. It just hasn't made it over to Trello or to Monday yet. So, I don't think there's anything controversial about each area being self-contained world unto itself. I mean, one of the ideas I have about that is that as you move to each one of those self-contained worlds, we will unlock for the player new and interesting powers or abilities that are very specific to the puzzles contained in that realm. And, you know, there's a lot of games out there in the world that do things like that. I think the Zelda games probably most well-known or famous among those. All right, what other questions do we have popping up here? Do you have any pictures of your ideas or existing sleeve art? I think that's somebody, not a question for me. That's somebody talking to someone else about tattoos. Sir Rackalam says, thank you for sharing the process. I'd love to stick around, but I have to go. I really enjoy watching the process and growth of the game. Well, that's fine, Sir Rack of Lamb. I hope you go and get basted or otherwise seasoned elsewhere. And do keep in mind that I'm recording this and I will upload it to YouTube later. So if you happen to check out, you can always come back and watch the full thing over on YouTube at a later date. All right. I really hope there's an art book, says Sophie Buckley. Yeah, well, there is. There's a Madness Returns art book. There was an art book we did for Otherlands. We actually just put out this Chinese version of the Madness Returns art book. So if you have the Madness Returns art book in English and you are a collector of stuff like this, then you can actually go to the Mysterious Shop and get an autographed copy of the Art of Madness Returns, but keeping in mind that this is the Chinese edition. Why is that? It's because Madness Returns was developed in China, here in Shanghai, where I'm based, by a predominantly Chinese team. And if you are a Chinese game developer working in China, there is a very high chance that you were inspired to become a game developer, especially if you're an artist, by the Art of Madness Returns book, the English version. So there was a publisher here in China that saw that the English and Japanese version of this book was selling like crazy, and so they got the license from Dark Horse to do a Chinese version, and now everybody in China has, or at least all of the artists have one of these on their desk as well. So if you want another cool version of that, then now you know where to go. All right, next point on the game loop. We have off main path loops containing treasure, loot, magic. I don't think there's anything controversial about that. We did the same thing in Madness Returns with the Radula shells and things like that. We've got gating difficulty, gating via difficulty of enemies, in other words, soft gates. Again, nothing controversial about this. It's just that once the train station, the game hub opens up, we would allow you to travel to places that you, quote, shouldn't be, but you'll just get pushed back from that zone by enemies that you cannot overcome because you don't yet have the skill or the weapon that's necessary. So it could be an environmental puzzle that you can't overcome or an enemy that you can't defeat because you haven't yet acquired the thing necessary for that. Game session length, this is point 4. We're looking at session lengths that are typical for modern day AAA console titles. That is, if you're not sort of vegging out for a whole day, which we sometimes do, but session length of 1 to 3 hours and a total game length of 20 to 30 hours. Now, like when I play Madness Returns, it takes me a really long time because I'm not someone who moves quickly through games. So I think suggesting 20 to 30 hours, it's sort of similar, in my mind at least, to what we did with Madness Returns. And says here that all of that is gated by narrative sequences and submissions with big hero reward moments. In other words, you wouldn't necessarily be able to speed run through all of this without going through some portions of the story that act as big gates to where you're going. Any more questions? Living Well, Living Hell says, will Asylum be more like an open world game as opposed to linear levels? Yes and no. So it's going to be still quite linear, but as I said, we're talking about putting a central hub in there, and then the hub would allow you to travel back and forth to places, mainly back, but it would allow you to travel to places that you have either not yet prepared for or that you've been to previously. I don't know that we're going to call it open world, but it certainly will have less sort of it'll be a little more open worldy than the previous two games. My idea there would be that, let's say you're in the denial realm and there's areas that you can't get to until you've gone forward past anger, and then you come back to denial because you now have the special high jump thing necessary to get to the top of a certain mountain, as an example. So what else do we have here? Fast travel. Yeah, fast travel is what the train station is. Putty Toes says, but will you offer an art book for AA? I'm assuming AA is Alice Asylum, and the answer is yes. We'll do an art book for Alice Asylum. Okay. Moving on. It's taking a lot longer than I thought it would. Our production plan. So this is section 5. And what we're proposing is that we would split our production between two locations, that is Shanghai and Thailand. Now, many of you are aware that Alice Madness Returns was built predominantly in Shanghai, but we actually used outsourcers in Thailand, and we used outsourcers around China, and we also had some tech outsourcers which were based in the US. So kind of funny flip-flopping of what people think of as outsourcing, because we were team in China outsourcing to the US, as you do. So these days, Shanghai has become incredibly expensive. It's actually more expensive to develop a game and to hire the necessary game developers in, say, Shanghai, in some cases more expensive than it would be in the United States. That's partly due to the fact that China has had crazy inflation over the past 15 years. As their economy has boomed, the cost of living has also increased dramatically, which means that the wages that you're paying to people has increased dramatically. And many people are not aware of this, but China has one of the most aggressive labor laws in the world, meaning that the protection afforded to employees in these companies is greater than, say, a lot of people hold up France as an example for really strong pro-employee labor laws. Well, what that means for production of a game where you're, say, hiring 300 people in total is that you simply cannot afford to hire 300 employees and then try to lay them off 2 years later when the game is done. So people then rely on outsourcing instead, because outsourcing on the front end is more expensive on a per month cost basis, but in the long term it's a lot cheaper, because you aren't having to maintain that staff after the product has finished. It's also a lot less traumatic for everybody involved, because outsourcers get involved with multiple projects and they know that projects come and go, and they're not looking to any one project to sustain them and their livelihood forever, right? Because they're constantly out there trying to work towards new projects and growing their teams. So yeah, we're going to split between Shanghai and Thailand. Imagine that our core design team, including myself, will be here running our business from Shanghai, as well as the merchandise stuff that we do. And then Thailand is where we're going to probably put the main studio, where all the level designers and asset wranglers and 3D modelers and animators and all these people are going to sit and work. But we're also going to, because it's now been proven that we can do this, we're also going to push really hard on the concept of a virtual office. In other words, lots of people working remotely on various aspects of the game, and then all of that content filtering down to the main studio in Thailand, where the rubber meets the road. They bring everything together into the final game. But what that means is, in terms of physical realities, like Spicy Horse in Shanghai, when we were building Madness Returns, was a studio of 80 people, all under one roof, all who had to go to work every single day and get along and make a game happen. I don't really want to have to run that sort of studio again. So ideally for me, we'd have a team of, say, 25 or 30 people sitting in Thailand who are the asset wranglers and the game builders. And then they are surrounded by another, say, 50 people who are working as a virtual online team. And then they are supported by, say, another 200 art asset creation people, who those assets go into the production of the game. So it's a bit of a hybrid approach to the way that we did it on Madness Returns. And this just goes through the pre-production, vertical slice, and development schedules. This is pre-production is this phase that we're currently in with Mysterious Design, which is my company. And then we're going to do vertical slice design. Now, we only have about a month in here because this is basically done. So once we get someone to sign this deal and start funding, it'll only take us a month-ish to pull together the full design for the vertical slice. And this 1 month is really just about getting the approvals necessary to move forward. And then the actual vertical slice development. Now, for those who don't know, a vertical slice is like if you have a complete and total game that's ready to ship to an audience, and you take a slice right out of it somewhere so that it looks complete and total, except that it's just this 1 hour playthrough chunk. That's what a vertical slice is. So we're giving ourselves 11 months to produce that. Now, a lot of times vertical slices are done because you want to prove to your financier and the publisher what the product is that you're building, and it gives them an opportunity to look at the vertical slice and go, yeah, we changed our mind. We don't really want to fund this whole thing, or they look at it and they go, oh, this is great, by the way, make a little few tweaks here and there. So we're going to take an approach of a smaller team working for a longer period of time to produce our vertical slice, because experience has taught me that vertical slices that are rushed, say you only give yourself 3 or 4 or 5 months with a larger team, they tend to be not as good as vertical slices where you're given more time to bake them and make them awesome using a smaller team. So that's the strategy there. Then we would deliver vertical slice at the 12th month, and then we go into full-blown development. Now, a little weird, we don't actually talk about the full-blown development. I know it's in this larger pitch, but it doesn't appear to be in that slide, so we're going to have to fix that. You can see it here. Pre-production, this is vertical slice in dark red, and then there's 2 years of full-blown game development delivering the finished product at the end of that, which would be the end of 2023. So I think that needs to be fixed on page 5. Let's see what other questions and comments we might have here. Will there be more paper cut animated scenes from AMR Alice Asylum, says Crimson D Art. I don't think so. I think that the paper cut animated elements from Madness Returns were really interesting, but they were also the necessity of constraint. We needed to tell story, but we kind of didn't have a big enough team or the resources or the money necessary to do it any other way. And Edward Goyne, which is the guy who ended up making those scenes, he basically came and said, look, I can make this happen. I can do it in this really interesting style. He made a proposal and he sold us on it, and we went with it. So it was sort of one of those inventions that was the child of necessity. Like, we had a bunch of story to tell and we just hadn't figured out exactly how we were going to do it until Edward came along and says, I can solve that problem for you with this style. So I don't know, for Asylum, are we going to need that sort of thing? We don't know just yet. Mezzo Dragon says, will the Cheshire Cat's head detach from his body this time? Because it was weird he died via decapitation in the first Alice game. Well, I don't know. I haven't thought about that. That's a very strange question. It's not a bad question. It's just not one that I thought about. I did purposely detach the White Rabbit's head in Madness Returns as a bit of an homage to that scene of the cat's head popping off in the first game. Maybe we need to pop someone's head off. Not sure. We'll have to. That's a good one. We'll have to figure that out. Taylamucci says, will there be any mentions of the Eat Me, Drink Me cakes and drinks for gameplay? Sure. It's it's one of the major motifs of the Alice literature, and we of course referenced to it in Madness Returns, and we referenced to it in the first game, so I would be surprised if we didn't reference to it in the new game. Putty Toes, do you think having a virtual office would take longer to make the game due to control issues? Putty Toes, I don't think so. And one of the reasons is that I've been running a virtual office here. That's what you see behind me there. I've been running a virtual office with a team of 8 people now, for some time. And Mysterious, my business that produces all the physical merchandise that we put up on the shop, it's a virtual office. And even Madness Returns, keep in mind that when we were developing Madness Returns, the core team of 80 people was sat in Shanghai, but it was a virtual office with another 200 people working outside of our office. And so we have all the tools and techniques for the remote management of large-scale teams. It's just that it's taken this current global pandemic to really drive home the point to big corporations that you don't have to have people come into offices in order to get them to be productive. In fact, it's been my contention for a very long time that people tend to be more productive when they're in less pressure kind of induced environments. So I find that I actually work more and more efficiently when I work in my home studio versus if I'm going into a big studio and a big team. So I don't think control issues is the thing that you have to be concerned about, because control is a function of this. Control is a function of your project planning and management system. And that was one of the things that we were really good at Spicy Horse. We managed people's time down to half-hour increments. Now, that may sound really draconian when you hear just that element of it, but keep in mind that our draconian time management meant that we never suffered crunch, we never worked overtime, and people never worked on the weekends. Why? Because we made an agreement with ourselves that we would have this very structured time and resource control system down to half-hour increments in exchange for not working overtime, not having crunch, and not having to work on the weekends. So my goal was always freedom through control, not like oppression through control. So I know that sounds contradictory, it sounds nonsensical, but the reality that I've experienced is that the better your control systems, the more freedom you have. Something that I don't think we're going to have to worry about. Talamuchi says, are the artists creating the concept art going to be artists in which create art for the final game process? Yeah. So Alex, Omri, Joey, Norm, Jen, those are all people that are currently working on Dario. Don't forget Dario. Those are all people who are currently working on Alice Asylum pre-production, and people who I very much want to have to continue their involvement as we go forward into the proper game development. So yeah, for sure, we're going to have all of them still be on the team. The Octo Chicken says, legitimately fascinating to hear this kind of information on studio setup and design. Well, thank you, Greg. Appreciate that. Living Well, Living Hell says, what part of the game will the slice cover? That's a good question. I think it's the first part of the game. That's why I say that it's basically done, because if you go over to Monday and you look at what we've done for the game, you'll find that the denial realm, if you scroll down through this, I'll just scroll here, it's all green, or mostly green, or it's like the tasks are ready to go, but a lot of this stuff is done, and so that's the zone that we would focus on for the vertical slice, is from the opening scene of the game through to her having hijacked the moon. And so I think that's what the vertical slice would be. What else have we got here for questions? All right, I think that's it for questions. Oh, Crimson Art says, any advice for people who want to start on the gaming art industry? Yeah, so this is a really common question, and the answer is really simple. Stop asking for advice, sit down and start doing. I know that sounds really brutal. I know it sounds perhaps tone deaf, because depending on what your situation is, or sort of what kind of resistance you think you've found, it may not seem like that's fair, but the truth is the only way to get good is to practice, and the only way to practice is by doing. So a lot of people come to us and say, hey, I want to be a concept artist on your projects. And I'll say, great, show me your portfolio. And they'll say, no, I don't have a portfolio yet. Give me an opportunity so that I can become an artist. And it's like, well, no, that's not how it works. You don't become a thing by getting hired to do the thing. You become the thing by doing the thing in your spare time, and then going and getting hired to do the thing because you proved that you could do it in your spare time. So if you want to do anything, whether it be programming or level design or art, go and start doing it. Don't wait for someone's permission. Don't ask for advice. Just download the tools and start making. It's the best advice that I can give you. All right, I'm going to try to wrap this up because we've been going on for nearly an hour and a half now. So point 6 here is just regards to the tech decision. We are really big fans of Unreal as far as the technology goes. Let's be really clear. I like the Unreal tool set. I have no opinion, nothing to say about the Unreal Store. I don't want to get involved with that controversy. I'm only saying that as far as the development of AAA console PC killer game titles go, the Unreal Engine, especially what they've just shown off with Unreal 5, is bar none the best bit of technology that you can use as a developer to build game content, and so we would be using Unreal. There's nothing else out there that comes even close to the level of quality and control that engine affords you. And again, I don't have a comment about the Unreal shop or any of the nonsense going on there. I literally don't even follow the controversy, so I don't want to get involved with that. Another reason why Unreal works for us is that Epic China is one of the Epic's sort of mega offices for support of the technology, and we're close to them. Being in Asia, we automatically fall under the umbrella of Epic China, and we're really close with them. We have a lot of friends working there, and they're very helpful in terms of support for everything from licensing to training to, you know, making sure we've got the latest and greatest updates, and also with things like relationships, introducing us to other studios or outsourcers that can help us. So there's a lot that comes with the name Epic as far as it relates to my relationships, my experience with them, our proximity to them here in China. So yeah, we'd be going with Unreal 5 as the game engine, period. What else have we got here? Questions? Okay. Target price points. You know, I don't know about this. I didn't actually come up with these numbers. I think that our financial advisor came up with these numbers, and they're basically just projections into the future of what these prices might be. But one point that I feel very strongly about is that there wouldn't, I don't think there should be a physical version of the game unless there's a collector, unless it is the collector edition. I think by the time we get to launching Alice Asylum, 90% of our consumers are going to download it digitally online, whether it be on their console or on Steam or on Origin or whatever. So that's what the digital price is. And then I don't even know what this pre-order first edition is. I'll have to dig into that. But my sense is that if you buy it physically, it ought to be something that warrants a $100 price point, meaning that it comes in a box with like a Cheshire Cat head and a Chaos coin and a t-shirt and I don't know, just like all of the collectibles in one box, because I don't care about the rest of it. You know, when I buy a game, I'm terrible. I'll get the game for my PlayStation, I'll take the disc out and I throw the rest of the packaging away. And then that's it. I mean, like, I don't care about it. But if I buy something where I get a physical goodie, or the package itself is the physical goodie, I'll even go so far as to buy the package itself and save one as the collector thing, and then I'll use the other one as the one that I play with. So my sense is that, like, our collector edition, there's maybe not even a game in there. There's just the code for getting the game off of your favorite digital platform, but the box itself is the thing that you're paying for that's got all the cool goodies inside. So I'm going to have to talk to the team about what the pre-order first edition is and why that's worth $59. But there you go. So that is the presentation. Again, that's the executive summary. I had hoped to go through this and the larger studio summary with all the other planning in there, but this has been going on for an hour and a half now. So, and it's Saturday here in Shanghai. I want to go play with my kids. So let me know if you're watching this on YouTube later on. You can let me know in the comments if you have any feedback or thoughts on what's been presented here. And for those of you that were here on Twitch, I'm going to give you a few more seconds to throw any sort of questions or comments you have at me before I take off. Now, I'll use a moment here just to say that if you like what we're doing and if you want to get behind and support Alice Asylum, the easiest way to do that is go over to AmericanMcGee.com. There is a place where you can sign up for our mailing list. Why? Because the more names of living interested fans that we have on the mailing list, the more EA or a potential publisher or financer will believe that there's a interested fan base out there. So don't sign up like your dead grandma or your dog. It needs to be you, like an interested person who really wants to see this game come to life. So yeah, that's the mailing list. Now, we do send out updates to that mailing list like once a month, but I try not to use it for anything other than just design updates and things like that. So I don't abuse that list, so don't feel fearful putting your name on that. Social media, there's Facebook, Instagram, Twitch, which is where we are now. There's Twitter, which is a garbage pile on fire, and there's YouTube, which we basically just use as a repository for recording these streams. So anyway, yeah, you can go follow me on those platforms. And then of course there's Patreon. So Patreon is how we pay for making all this content, and we're eternally grateful to and thankful for our patrons. Like literally, if it was not for Patreon, we could not be doing this, because Patreon pays for the overhead of a team of 8 artists, plus not just their production costs, but like making all the prints and all the shipping and everything that we send out to all of our patrons every month. So it's a really effective way, if you're a fan of putting in a few dollars a month and getting out really good art, design updates, conversations like this. And if you support at certain levels, you also can get physical rewards like art prints and chaos coins and chaos necklaces and all this kind of stuff. So that's Patreon. And then last but not least is the Mysterious Shop. You can go there and buy skulls. I don't know why, but we sell we sell a surprising number of skulls. I don't know why skulls are like among our best selling items, and I think that the factory in China that makes these skulls must think that, why the hell are we constantly shipping this huge amount of skulls to this guy in Shanghai? But we do sell skulls, and we also make like wallets and jewelry and all kinds of crazy stuff. So if you're interested in physical merchandise, there is the Mysterious Shop, and you can go and buy stuff there. And then when you buy stuff there, it kind of supports me and my family. My wife is a fashion designer, so a lot of the stuff you see over there, like purses and wallets, these are all things that she designed. And so when you purchase those things, it makes my wife happy. So if you want to support my family directly or support my wife's creative endeavors, then the Mysterious Shop is the place for you. All right, last couple of comments and questions. Telemooch says, I only buy physical copies, so I'm all for this. Yes. I have boxes, cases, inserts for every game I ever bought. Lol, says Putty Toes. Well, if I was in the boardroom, I'd approve this sales pitch. Then again, I'm a bit biased. Yes, Greg, I do wish that you were in the boardroom. We need to figure out how to make you a billionaire so that you can approve and fund this. So let's chat on email. All right, buddy? We'll figure out how to make you a billionaire first, and then you can approve and fund all of this. Silver Jinx says, I bought the AMA PC game for the box and case book, even though I already had it. Yeah, the original Alice game was pretty cool because it did have that case book in there. So it had a piece of physical collector stuff in the box, which I thought added a lot of interesting value to that. Crimson Art says, is there a Vorpal dress concept? Man, there is a lot of dresses. I don't know. I mean, you go over to Patreon and scroll back. You'll find all the dresses, but I'll just show you really quick here. There's a giant collection. Now, I don't know if we have something called a Vorpal dress. There's things like, this is the alchemy dress, and front and back. So this would be the dress that she would wear, say, in the Mad Hatter's realm. Close-ups on that. She's got the Chaos necklace on. And yeah, we've got tons of dresses. I don't think we've ever called anything the Vorpal dress, though. Because kind of in a way, they're kind of all the Vorpal dress. So I don't know. What else have we got? Deeps to the peeps. Oh, someone says, Living Well, Living Hell says, I miss Martin. Well, that hurts my feelings. Are you trying to say that you don't enjoy me streaming by myself? I mean, you've got his chair here. It asks questions in the chat just about as good as Martin's. Deeps to the Peeps says, will you be back tomorrow? That is the plan. Tomorrow is Sunday, and Sunday morning I will come down here and do one more hour again, because I'm trying to unlock my Twitch, let's see, affiliate badge or something like that. Telemucci says Martin will be back for the regular streams. That is correct. And is the mysterious makeup tested on animals? Telemucci, no. We do not test the mysterious makeup on animals. For those of you who don't know, my wife is working on a makeup set, and that set will be made here in China. And there's a lot of controversy around the question of animal testing on makeup in China, because for a very long time, there was a rule on the Chinese sort of law books with regards to makeup development, which stated that animal testing was a necessity for especially makeup products that were developed in China to be sold in China, but also for foreign brand makeup products that were brought into China. Those also had to employ some form of animal testing. Now, that rule has been changed. So you can make in China to sell to a foreign market, and you don't have to do animal testing. So that's the umbrella we fall under, because we will make in China, but we won't sell in China. And as a result, we have vegan and cruelty-free status. Actually, we're not properly vegan because we use those caramine bugs. They squish up to make really bright reds. So if you don't like squished bugs, don't buy our product. It actually says that here. You can see that we use caramine. That means squished up bugs, and that's been used for thousands of years, going back to the Egyptians, for certain colors of red. And yes, we know that there are vegan alternatives to caramine, but my wife, Yin, is allergic to those alternatives because they use certain metals in them that a lot of people are allergic to. So, as I said here, we had a choice between face-exploding allergies or squished bugs, so we squished some bugs. Anyway, this whole makeup thing, it's very easy to step into controversy. We're trying our best to be very careful, but this is a work in progress. If you go over to the Mysterious site, you'll see that the makeup is not yet available. You can hit a button to be notified when it goes on sale. And I can tell you that Yin, my wife, just this week got an update from the factory. The clock is ticking towards something like an October release. So we're hoping that by October 2020, these will be available for sale, which means you should be able to order them in time for Christmas. So there you go. What other questions do we have? Mysterious tested on animals? No. Thank you for the stream. I bought the tapestry set. Well, thank you, Code Meister. Appreciate that. I snorted. What a roast on Martin. Of course, I let you. Of course, I enjoy your company, American. I just like seeing you two riff off each other. Yeah, Martin's great. It's actually not easy for me to do these streams by myself. I start to lose my voice because without him here, I can't take a break to sip water or to ponder just how terrible his questions for the chat are. So, will Lulu ever make a cameo in one of your games, Asylum? Well, Lulu does make a cameo in Out of the Woods. She's the dog on one of the cards in that game. But I don't know, no, there's not really a place for her to make a cameo in Asylum, so that doesn't make any sense. Someone says, why a cameo? There should be a full Lulu game. Yes, there should. All right, what else do we have here? Nail polish win. Yeah, go check out the Mysterious page. Sign up for that notification, and then you can get info on things like nail polish as well. All right, I think that's it. I'm going to sign off because otherwise I'm going to lose my voice and I won't be able to do anything else for the rest of the day. So, people of YouTube who have been watching this, again, comments and feedback in the comments below. Those of you here on Twitch that joined me this morning, thank you very much for coming along for the ride and checking out the presentation. I think tomorrow I'll come back and we will go through the giant presentation. This was the small one. Tomorrow we have a giant one to go through. So if you want to join for that, it'll probably be around the same time. And I'll try to send out a notification before we go live. Based on what we did today, it feels to me like this might take 4 hours to go through. So my voice. Anyway, thank you to everybody who joined this morning. And we will see you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.